We could start then by welcoming our youngest star, Brandubh, who's recently gone viral in America after a blistering poem she delivered at Let Women Speak Belfast.
I started secondary school in September 2021 when I was 12 years old, and I was not an activist. I knew about gender ideology and I knew it was all insanity, but it just felt like this really faraway thing that had absolutely nothing to do with me. But that all changed when it abruptly came into my life just a few weeks later. Later that year, in November, my school celebrated Stand Up Week, which is also known as Stand Up Awareness Week. This week is supposedly about not bullying LGBTQ plus people, which I support completely. Nobody should have a problem with that. And nobody should be bullied at all. But that wasn't true. The week was really about shoving TQ plus propaganda down our throats. Stand Up Week is organised by Belong To, which in that image there, you can see that's an extract from their teacher training manual. And yeah, Belong To is such a dangerous organisation. And they are so anti-safeguarding, it's unbelievable. So in that extract on your screen there, you can see that they tell teachers to keep secrets from parents and to lie to parents about their children. It is it's unbelievable that this can happen and it's excused and that it's pushed in schools. That's an extract from a booklet I was given in class during stand-up week. Some of the terms, this was written by Belong To as well. So some of the terms there include cisgender or cis, and it is described as someone whose gender identity matches the sex they were assigned at birth. There's just so much rubbish there. Like, your sex isn't assigned at birth. And also, I and many other women find the term cis offensive, but it's still being pushed on people in school, which is just outrageous. And then they talk about pronouns, and they go into neo-pronouns as well, and they just sound so ridiculous. I'm not sure how people can use these with a straight face, but yep, people do. So in the class where I was given this booklet, I asked my teacher some questions about gender ideology. My first question was to explain what is in the plus. I'm sure we'd all like to know that. But it's just so open-ended, but everyone is expected to support it without question. So I asked him, and his answer was incredibly vague. It did not make sense at all. So I made my question a little bit more precise, and I asked, is there a possibility paedophilia could be in the plus? And this is actually terrifying, but he couldn't give me a definite answer. He left that, yeah. Another question I asked was about the issue of men identifying as trans in order to get into women's prisons. He told me this was a very extreme example. Even if it was extreme and didn't happen a lot, that still is outrageous. Even one man being locked up in a women's prison is one man too many. Anyway, it's not extreme because it's happening all the time. But he then went on to say, and I'm quoting him here, hopefully situations like that wouldn't arise. Well, I'm sure they do. Of course they do. But hopefully situations like that wouldn't arise. So he clearly has no clue what he was talking about. At the end of stand-up week on the Friday, the Progress Pride flag was raised and all the students were expected to clap and cheer. Well, I refused because I was not prepared to celebrate the erasure of my sex class, because that's what I see when I see that flag. All I see is the pink and blue, and that is erasing my rights as a sex class. But I watched from afar as everyone else clapped and cheered, and the atmosphere was just so cult-like. It was insane. I just could not believe what I was seeing. This cult-like atmosphere, it has absolutely no place in schools. On that Friday, I went home thinking, thank goodness, I won't have to deal with this rubbish for another year. But yeah, that wasn't the case. It didn't stop. The next Monday, my science teacher pulled me out of class, and yes, this was my science teacher. She pulled me out of class and told me that I had made very offensive comments about trans people, and that some people in my class had perceived me as being transphobic. Which was, yeah, so she expected me to be horrified and terribly apologetic, because that's the worst thing you can do these days, being accused of transphobia. But oh well, I wasn't. We argued for around half an hour about it, and the conversation ended with her, my science teacher, telling me that being a man or a woman has nothing to do with your reproductive system, and that sex is a spectrum. I mean, how am I supposed to trust anything she says now? This is my science teacher. I mean, it's just... Yeah, I can still barely believe that happened. It's still so surreal to this day. But it wasn't over yet. A few weeks later, I got pulled out of class, this time by my year head, again for my offensive comments, aka questions. My year head told me that because my school is so inclusive, I shouldn't voice my beliefs there. And my beliefs are just... they're not even beliefs. I just understand reality. That's not a belief, but anyway. So yeah. So because my school is so inclusive, my beliefs aren't welcome here. So how is that inclusive in the slightest? It's not. But oh, and then, so yeah, I told him that I have every right to talk about reality if I want to, and that I will continue to do so. He said that if I keep doing that, he told me that more drastic action would have to be taken. So yeah, everyone in my class has been, they really hated that they were really outraged about what I asked, the questions I asked in that class. And they've been bullying me since. No one will talk to me. In a class without a seating plan, I will sit down and all the students will actively avoid that table, because you can't associate with the turf, because that'd be just so awful. So, yeah, and the teachers do nothing about it, because, yeah, apparently it seems I deserve it. In one class, we were put into partners to work on a project. The girl I was working with went up to the teacher, and they had a discussion, and then suddenly something happened, and I had to work on my own. Like, it was fairly obvious what happened there. The girl had complained about having to work with a transphobe, and the teacher went, "Oh, well, that's not right. You shouldn't have to work with her." And I had to work on my own. The other thing I find really interesting about my school is the old-fashioned misogyny coexists with this new woke version. For example, with a sport like tennis, an extracurricular activity, girls will sometimes be asked to give their rackets to boys if the boys forgot theirs. So the boys are prioritized over the girls. It's just outrageous. And when it comes to this, they know the difference between boys and girls. So my school has tried to gaslight me into thinking reality isn't real. They've tried to silence me. They've tried to shut me up. And they've tried to intimidate me into silence. But, well, they've failed miserably. And, well, they don't know what they've unleashed on the world, because I am not backing down. I was not an activist when I started at that school, but I definitely am now.